John, here we are. For those of you that are wondering why John has a funny eye, he went out drinking last night and fell on the ice. I'm just joking. John, what did you do to your eye?
I didn't do anything. But I woke up 3 or 4 days ago, looked in the mirror. My God, my eye was all full of blood. Well, it wasn't actually because the blood's behind the eye. It's what they call a bloodshot eye. The blood vessel must have broken and filled it with blood. But I gather there's nothing one can do. Someone just has to wait till the blood dissipates again. Anyway, it looked a bit sinister, doesn't it? Looks like a pirate.
I think you look very handsome.
It's my usual smiley self behind it, so don't be frightened.
It's your pirate look.
My pirate look.
I'll have to get you an eye patch, John. Oh, funny. This is a very short chapter, chapter 33 in our book, on the occasion of George's christening. Who is George, John?
He's one of my godsons. He's an English boy from a Russian mother. Lives in a nearby town. I've got a few godchildren. I don't think I've ever been very successful with them. Most of them I've lost touch with.
So George is now an adult, but you wrote this about his christening.
Christening, yes.
Christening, my American accent, yeah. mixed with Austrian. We're quite the pair, John. And you write, attention is focused on the physical body, but man is also mind and spirit. And this really struck me where you write, soon George will develop mind. He'll speak, think, and express a will of his own. That's when his problems start.
Yes, exactly.
You care to elaborate?
So that's a process for all of us. The baby in its pram is, well, comparatively simple. But my God, once they start talking and saying, I want this, then this and that, the problems start. I'm not sure what I can say anymore, really, but people often ask me, why are we in this human? Why is the human situation as it is? And I go back with this example. Well, just consider what happens. You can see it as a child develops. And this is usually encouraged by the parents and by his education, which fills his mind up with what you might call conditioning. The modern word for it, isn't it? It may or may not be beneficial. Funnily enough, on my walk this afternoon, I met quite a small young woman on a very large horse. And we'd spoken before, last year I think we'd met. Anyway, she was very gracious and nice, and we chatted a bit. And the horse was, she was very surprised at the behaviour of the horse. I don't know why, because the horse behaved as though it liked me. And she was nuzzling me in a very nice way, gentle way, and doing the things horses usually do when they're feeling comfortable and well disposed towards someone. And the girl kept saying, gosh, look how he likes you. He really likes you. Loves you. Well, I'm surprised I was ever so touched because nothing pleases me more than an animal. um, shows shows that it likes me. Dogs is fairly common, but horses is not so usual. He was a big horse, and I was unsteady on my legs, so I felt completely protected. I felt the horse knew exactly the state I was in, and it was prancing around a bit. It didn't disturb me. I felt completely safe just standing on my wobbly legs beside him. A really lovely experience. How can the exchange of love be so wonderfully simple between an animal and man, so unbelievably complex between people? As a farmer, I've had a lot to do with animals, and they're so straightforward and uncomplicated. Sheep and cows and horses, pigs too. How do we get so screwed up? I've not got children myself, but I've known a few, and this particular young man, he's got very much into technology now, so I hardly know what to say to him. He lives in another world to me. I'm completely not technical, but he's into drones. He, God knows, he can do anything with his phone. I don't even have a phone. Um, so I don't know whether my being his godfather has been any use to him or not. um, he'll be a good man with his technical abilities. I don't know, he's a very nice young boy, and he's always very polite when he meets me. I'm trying to be kind and nice to him. I suppose that hasn't been complete failure. I think he's impressed that his godfather has got so many watchers on YouTube. I think that's sunk in. I don't know if he's ever actually watched anything. Mm, God bless him.
You're his
Mm.
YouTube celebrity.
Yes.
Funny.
I think, how can I protect my children from misfortunate aspects of life? God knows, my dears, God knows.
I was just going to ask you, what advice would you give to parents with newborn baby or young children? What could they do to help them if they themselves are on a spiritual path?
What did my parents do for me? Well, of course, there was no internet then, and our main source of information was books. But my father was meticulous in buying good quality books for me, and being an artist himself, he always chose books with beautifully drawn illustrations. It was before books were illustrated with photographs, then the books were illustrated by hand. And he always chose the very best artists. Maybe I'm talking about art. I remember Dad once said once to me, a horse should look like a horse. And I've always kept this in my mind when I look at illustrations. Now, few people can draw a horse properly these days because there aren't that many to look at. But I think that was a very influential thing that my father did for me. What did my mother do for me? Well, above all, she was an artist in her housework. So not only did she knit by hand all the woolies I had as a boy, including gloves, and little hats and things. But mended. She made my clothes by herself when I was a child, made them by hand, didn't buy them. They were always meticulously mended. You didn't throw clothes away in those days. You kept patching them and mending them, kept them until you grew out of them, couldn't wear them anymore. They would have passed on to somebody else. But it was that quality of care, tender, loving care that permeated my childhood. That's been immensely important to me. It's extraordinary how there's always become a culture of not caring now. People dress in sloppy sort of ways, don't they, in casual ways. Don't lace up their shoes, wear all sorts of different things have changed. I can't think that really is conducive to a disciplined and orderly mind. It must somehow lead to a sloppy mind. So I'm surprised very few people actually follow me in the discipline that I've always attached to spiritual work and stood me in good stead. The discipline of it, that even now at my age, keeps me going up to the church twice a day to sit to meditate. Not many people do that. Well, maybe it isn't necessary, maybe it is, I don't know, but that's the way I've lived my life. And what can I do for my godson? I try to keep him in spirit. I try to remember that he's more than his body and his mind. I can't do much to control those or even influence them. I don't see him that often. But when I think of him, I try to hold him in this silent presence in which you and I sit now, in which the body and the mind diminish in importance as the prevalence of this spiritual presence becomes apparent. I think that for me is prayer, and that's the most helpful thing I can do. Holding him before God. First of all, I've got to believe in it, which I do. But goes one step further. I know I've had enough experience of spirit to know that that is real. But the spiritual reality of everybody is not the body and the mind. This is a superficial and transitory thing. The real substance of a person is his spirit. And to maintain that in my consciousness must in some way radiate out, influence whether it can reach. If my bad thoughts go out and create a ripple in the ripple throughout the world, so does these radiations of higher consciousness. And that's what prayer is. Prayer is holding the worldly situation in the consciousness of spirit, where nobody dies. The whole thing of death is just a transitory appearance. The the spiritual reality of man is not shaken.
John, you write here that life is really a journey back to what we originally spiritually are. Yeah. Why do you think that some people have an inner sense of that and others do not.
I don't know, dear. I don't know why it is, but they say every tiger has different sorts of stripes, don't they? Every leopard has different spots. Every person is different in some way. Well, perhaps it isn't so difficult really if one keeps it very simple. Well, an example that comes to mind is, think if you have a little garden, there are a million and one different ideas in what you should do to a garden, aren't there? And how you should treat the land. Some people are into natural methods and some are into artificial methods, and some want vegetables and some want flowers and some want this, that and the other. And according to what's done to it, the garden will bear the consequences, won't it? So it is the way children are brought up and nourished, and the sort of people their parents are and their grandparents, and all these things will have an influence on them. I never doubted that the world is perfect according to law. Law of cause and effect is operative. And as ye sow, so shall ye reap, is the old saying. Amen to that. We bear the consequences, don't we, of our thoughts, our actions, our everything. Everything. We harvest them. The harvest of our lives that we pass on to the next generations. It's the basic thing that's common to all of us is that just this evening there was listening to this Christmas Eve, there was a carol service on the radio, and they were reading the story of Adam's expulsion from paradise. Well, at least according to that story in the Bible, in the beginning there was this one man. Adam was one man, lived in paradise with God. And then a woman came into the picture, and then Adam, or the woman was tempted, and Adam did what he had been told not to do, and for that he fell. He fell, as I understand it, in consciousness from this high state of spiritual unity into the divisiveness of lower consciousness. And hence you get not only duality, but the billions and billions of differences that there are in the world, although basically we're all one people, with one spirit in everybody, even though it appears that we're millions of different people. Well, that one spirit is the fundamental reality of everybody. And when you get to my age, it's very obvious that the body and mind die out, and the great question is what's left? But what is left? Is it this silent, invisible spirit? Well, I suspect it is, but I'm damn sure it is. And it's about the only thing I am sure of now at this time of my life. And it's called, in old-fashioned language, saving the soul. And I could tell you that nothing else seems very important in comparison. It may have seemed important to me 50, 60, 70 years ago, but now I can hardly remember all those years. I can hardly remember them at all. Where have they all gone? Water under the bridge. And extraordinary. So did it really matter as much as I thought it mattered at the time? At the time it didn't. No, God knows. Anyway, I'm only too thankful to feel I'm back home, or coming back home now, to perhaps something approaching that original state. singular, undivided, in a reality where there's no darkness and no death, and no problems, no question beyond words, but it's about words can serve any purpose. It's complete, complete in a way that our mortal lives never are. So I suppose with my godchildren, that's the best service I can be to them, is to hold the reality of their completion as they struggle through their lives like everybody else. When they remember this funny old man, Uncle John, their godfather, who said things like this.
John, a little off topic, but I thought this might be helpful for people that are reading this book or any of your books. How would you recommend someone actually read your book?
Oh, it's rather a difficult question, isn't it? But you know, the greatest lessons in life are not, especially in terms of spiritual life, we don't so much discover what to do. I'm not sure we really discover anything very much. But what we do learn is that certain things don't work or don't serve very well. And if you pick up this book of mine and just sort of try to read it through like a novel, and I know some people do, and a couple of weeks later they say to me, oh, what a marvelous book. And they manage to devour it all in a couple of weeks. Well, I don't so I take it with a pinch of salt. I think I may not say it, but I'll think it when you wasted your time. There's probably no bad thing to begin with, to just dip into it, just read a line or two here and there, explore it, and then maybe go back and read a bit. I can assure you, you won't absorb the half of it, not a fraction of it. First time you read it, you'll need to go back and read it again and again and again.
If someone is reading this as your first book, John, what book would you recommend they read next?
Mystic Beginnings. Mystic Beginnings goes back to my earliest childhood, my first memories. Yes, and it goes through to the first 45 years of my life. If you're interested in farming, the Mystic Apprentice is interesting. Long series of mainly articles and things I wrote in my late 30s and 40s about farming. Farming was my great teacher. I learned more from farming than anything, really. I always thought of the land as the book of God. God did teach me a lot of the basic principles of life. Talk about as you sow, so shall you reap. Straight from farming, straight from the harvest field. Man proposes, God disposes. Nearly all the old wisdom was based on man's connection with nature, the greatness of God and the smallness of man. Learning to trust. Nature knows best. Just recently, I watched a few. It was a series on the BBC about a nuclear submarine. It was sort of drama, crime drama, but it was filmed in, a lot of it was filmed in a nuclear submarine. I was looking at the way, well, I suppose it was fairly accurate. I've never been on a nuclear submarine, but they had 100 or more men who were operating this boat. And it was unbelievably technical. They all had computers and electronic screens everywhere. And, oh, God knows how they knew what to do. And I was bewildered by it. But then I thought of that, that how we depend on these things, but a totally man-made contraption, absolutely man-made from beginning to end. And we put such reliance on this thing for our defense, or whatever its use is. Well, they say it's for our defense, don't they? We've all got these nuclear submarines. We're defending ourselves, I suppose, against each other. Anyway, that's another subject. But there was a sheer artificiality of it that really shook me. There's a whole Bible there telling us to rely on God, to trust God. Trust God and things will go right for you. And in a way, farming taught me that too, to trust nature. The more I trusted nature, the more I learned from nature, the better I farmed. And so that's in a way one side of thing. On the other is this nuclear submarine, totally devoid of anything natural, totally man-made thing in which we put our trust. So much of medicine has now become such a totally man-made thing, isn't it? Man-made drugs, man-made pills, man-made remedies for everything. Some of them are based on nature. But the Bible tells us so loudly and clearly, don't trust man, trust God. I suppose that's the great thing I've learned in life, that to trust God and not to trust man. Seemed to be a bit of a lone voice in that. A few people agree. The nuclear submariners don't, do they? They believe in what they're doing. God bless them. Sorry, I'm wandering around in this interview, aren't I? It must be my bloodshot eye. My focus is a bit wobbly today.
As always, John, I think the message is very clear and very consistent with what you write about and speak about. So I very much appreciate that. And I love that it always comes back to simplicity.
I wrote a rather long letter about things I felt were significant. Certainly sent it out to a few friends. And I suppose I wasn't too surprised at their lack of response. Most people haven't even responded at all. So once again, I sort of pricked my bubble of pride. But I do notice how very, very few people actually take much, if any, notice of what I say or what I write. Very few. It's amazing our capacity to read volumes of words and paper. Talk about going in one ear and out of the other. I think very little actually sinks in. Basically, we're stuck in our own ideas, our own opinions, and nothing much changes that throughout our lives. I don't think we can go on countless retreats and hear countless wise people talking about this and that. And I suppose we learn a bit, maybe sometimes, but I think I notice more how little people actually take notice of what they read or hear. I don't think I take much notice really. Maybe I did when I was younger. As one gets older, one gets more sort of fixed in one's mental outlook, and you need what an earthquake to shift it. Thousands of words have I written, 10 books. Will they have any effect upon anything or anybody? God knows.
We are very glad that you wrote them.
A few people say kind things like that, which please me, but I'm still left wondering. It's interesting, if God really is the main sort of functioning force in life. It's remarkable that he does it without producing books or talking, does it in silence. Wonders if silence isn't really the most effective communication of all. Silence which gives other people space to develop, rather than putting ever more stuff into them. Maybe that's the best thing I've been to my godchildren, really. Just not to have my best service to them was not to thrust a lot of my own thoughts onto them, but rather hold them in space. Maybe that was it. Maybe just holding them in this infinite space has been the best thing I could possibly do for them. Holding them in freedom. I do learn a lot from stars. And what do these stars do for me? This little man down on earth looking up at his beloved stars. Even if I think of them as well, it's a bit presumptuous to call them my little brothers. They're my very big brothers. Whether they think of me as their little brother, I don't know. But anyway, how do they help me? How have they helped me throughout my whole life? Stars. They've just given me that space, haven't they? That infinite acceptance, loving acceptance. How do I know the stars I love? Other people will say, oh, they're just gas and molecules or something. Why do I say they're love? Old fool, what do I know? I just believe them. My heart tells me. Being held by them, held in the arms of stars. Yeah, I feel at home, I'm happy, at peace. Maybe to a very, very small extent, I've been the sort of human starlight to my godchildren. A mini version of the star. That might be my best service to them. There's one in Australia, another one in Russia, a couple in Russia, there's one in Peru. This boy near my town, forget how many there are. 5. God bless them all, wherever they are.